At this point, we're pretty much finished modeling the modifications to the car. Now we're ready to go in and begin the process of using Photoshop to create decals and textures to really add the finishing touches to this car. Okay, so here's where we left off with the last video with the completed car, and I've gone ahead and pretty much converted everything back to a polygon surface. So the hood, the front bumper, the back bumper, all these pieces that were subdivision surfaces, I've gone ahead and converted back to polygons since we're pretty much finished now with the modeling, and converting these back to a polygon will just make it easier to do the UV layouts and later on do the texturing. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll start with the hood, with the UV layout for the hood. And to start things off, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a top view for the UV layout. And with this hood selected, let's go up to Edit Polygons. We'll go to Texture, and let's do a planar map. And before we assign this planar map, let's go over to the Options. Okay, and a few options that we want to make sure are turned on. Let's go ahead and just reset this to make sure that we haven't already made any changes to this. Let's go ahead and, in the mapping direction, let's go ahead and set this to camera. And in the, let's go ahead and keep the image ratio. That's the other one. Those are the two options we want to go ahead and make sure are turned on. Image ratio and camera. So let's go ahead and project this. Okay, and when you project this, it's going to bring up the manipulator. And let's go ahead and go over to Window, UV Texture Editor, and make sure that everything's set up properly. Okay, everything looks pretty good for the most part. Okay, so with everything selected here, let's go ahead and go up to Polygons, and let's get a UV snapshot out that we can take back into Photoshop. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and assign this to text underneath the texture folder, and I'll just call this car hood underscore text UV. Okay, and that just, I usually use the UV extension just so I know that it's the UV map and not any sort of a color or bump map. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save this and set a size. 2048 is going to be a little bit too big. So let's go ahead and set this to 1024, and I'll export this as a JPEG and hit OK. And now that's exported the UV snapshot that we need. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up Photoshop, and let's go ahead and open up that UV layout that we just created. And here's what we get. And one thing I'm going to use is, you may notice inside of your textures folder, you have a folder in here called Total Textures. And what this is a small sample of textures that have been licensed to us by 3D Total. And they have a whole bunch of texture CDs. One of these, version 8, has just a whole bunch of really, really nice car decals, dirt maps, things like that. So we've actually been licensed a few of these to use here on our training kit. So the one that we want to use is this hood3.tiff, and you can see this is the image. So let's go ahead and open this up. And before I use this on my hood, I want to modify the color on this just a little bit. Okay, so with this texture open, let's go up to Image, Adjustments, and let's adjust the hue and saturation on this. Okay, and what I want to do is make this a little bit more of a lighter blue color. So what we can do is you go ahead and just modify the color on this just a little bit. And if you're having trouble finding just the right shade of blue, you might want to turn on this Colorize checkbox right down here in the lower corner. Okay, let's go ahead and take this saturation back up. And this will sometimes make it a little easier to find just the right color of blue, or whatever color you happen to be looking for. Okay, so something like that's pretty acceptable. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And now we have something that's a little bit of a lighter blue. Now, over here, all of these textures that are acquired from 3D Total, they all have a alpha channel built into them. So in Photoshop, if you click on this little Channels tab, you can see that you have an alpha channel. Okay, so let's control click on this alpha channel, and when we do that, you can see the marquee appears around these sections of the image. Okay, so with our move tool, let's go ahead and just take this and now drag it down onto our hood. Okay, so with this hood decal layer selected, I want to hit Control T on my keyboard. You can also, if you're looking for the actual tool, if you go up to Edit and then Free Transform, this is actually the tool we're going to be using, Control T. Okay, and with this, I can now rotate the hood texture. I can also scale it and get it placed just into the right position. And what I can also do is if I hold down on my Control key while I have this Free Transform box enabled, what I can do is actually pull some of these little markers at the end and do things like skew it. So if I need to pull this into a shape that more closely matches my UV layout, I can do that. Okay, so once I've got this skewed into the right position, I can just go ahead and hit Enter. Okay, now what I want to be able to do is have an alpha channel that will take this shape out in Maya. So what I can do is just control click on this layer 1, and you can see once I've done that, again my marquee or my marching ants appears around this selection. And let's go back to channels, and you can see right now we don't have an alpha channel. Okay, so we can add one by just clicking on this Add New Channel. Okay, and it's going to go ahead and automatically name this channel Alpha 1. Okay, and what I can do is, with this Alpha 1 selected, I can hit Control Backspace on my keyboard, and what Control Backspace will do is fill with whatever this background color happens to be. In our case it's white, okay, which is exactly what we want. And now with this alpha channel, everything that falls within this white area will be left behind, and everything in this black area will be transparent. Okay, so now what I can do is go ahead and save this back out as a file format that will have this alpha channel still attached to it. So what I can do is go up to File, go to Save As, and let's save this as a TIFF image. Okay, so we can do this and call this car hood decal. Okay, and it's going to save an alpha channel. And we want to make sure that this layers checkbox is turned off, because otherwise, in the newer versions of Photoshop, you have the ability to save layered TIFFs. But for what we're going to be doing with it, which is using it as a texture in Maya, we want to make sure that this is turned off. Okay, hit Save, and it's going to bring up this dialog box also. We want to set it to no compression, hit OK. And now in the next video, we'll go ahead and assign this as the hood texture in Maya.